How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Monitor Comics, the channel where we create comics and manga. In today's video, we will be talking about how to create antagonist characters for your graphic novel projects. Antagonists are central characters who directly oppose your story's protagonist. Think of characters like M from One Piece, Frieza from Dragon Ball, and Madara Uchiha from Naruto. By the end of this video, you will understand the elements that define a well-written antagonist character. Make sure you watch this video in its entirety because I'll be sharing 5 tips for creating great antagonist characters. But first, let's hear a word from today's sponsor. This video is proudly brought to you by SKILLSHARE. SKILLSHARE is an online learning community with thousands of online classes for anyone who loves learning and wants to explore their creativity. SKILLSHARE is the perfect place to get inspired, learn new skills, and put them to work in impactful ways. SKILLSHARE classes range from photography, illustration, graphic design, animation, freelancing, and more. For my audience, I highly recommend you check out SKILLSHARE's classes focused on creating comics and manga. There are so many great resources for improving your manga artwork and storytelling abilities. Right now, I am taking the class Social Media for Creatives, 5 Exercises to Power Your Freelance Career by Andy J. Pizza. Andy J. Pizza is an illustrator, designer, and podcaster best known for his picture books. In this class, I learned about the benefits for using different social media platforms such as Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Kickstarter, and Patreon. I also learned how to create a social media plan to grow my audience, create value in my content, engage with my subscribers, and work towards reaching 1,000 true fans. By the end of this class, I had a new appreciation for social media. I also developed a better understanding of how to use social media as a tool to grow as a freelance content creator. If you are an aspiring comic artist, manga artist, or webtoon creator, I highly recommend you check out the SKILLSHARE course. SKILLSHARE is ad-free, so you can stay in the zone while you are exploring new skills. New premium classes launch every week, so there's always something new to discover on SKILLSHARE. If English is not your first language, SKILLSHARE's entire catalog is now available with subtitles in Spanish, French, Portuguese, and German. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my video description and pinned comment will get a 1-month free trial of SKILLSHARE. Take this opportunity to invest in yourself and your goals by becoming a SKILLSHARE member today. Thank you again, SKILLSHARE, for continuing to support the creative community. Now let's get back to the video. In storytelling, the antagonist is the opposing force that is working against the protagonist, or the main character's goal. As a result, the central antagonist creates the main conflict in your story. An antagonist can be one character or a group of characters. Think of antagonist characters like Father from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, All For One from My Hero Academia, and Muzan from Demon Slayer. All 3 of these characters serve as the big bad or the main antagonist in their respective series. Minor antagonists, known as arc villains, include the homunculi from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, the League of Villains in My Hero Academia, and the demons in Demon Slayer. They serve under their respective series' main antagonists. Your central antagonist should be the final boss in your story. All of the events in your comic, manga, or webtoon should be working towards confronting that one opposing force. Protagonists and antagonists are both essential characters in any story. They push the plot forward in different and opposite ways. The backbone of every story is the conflict. Conflict is what will drive your main character to grow into a better character. The source of conflict can take the form of self-doubt, self-loathing, fear of the unknown, debt, and a physical force such as the antagonist. You should think of your antagonist as the personification of conflict. Usually, the protagonist represents the theme of a story. The antagonist's opposition is what allows the protagonist to reveal their personality, desires, fears, and beliefs. As a result, the reader is able to see the theme that your protagonist represents through the opposition of the antagonist. Think about it. If the protagonist wants something and it is easy to get, there will be no story. The main role of the antagonist is to oppose your protagonist's character. This concept of opposing can take on many different forms. There are 3 main types of antagonist characters, including villains, conflict creators, and the protagonist themselves. A villain is defined as the bad guy in a story. It is very important to note that all villains are antagonists, but not all antagonists are villains. Villain characters tend to do quote-unquote bad things for evil purposes. Villains can serve minor roles or be the main source of conflict in your story. Examples of popular villain characters include Sosuke Aizen from Bleach, Ragyo Kiryu from Kill la Kill, and Blackbeard from One Piece. What all of these characters have in common is they commit nefarious acts that will benefit themselves. They manipulate others and get their hands dirty to achieve their goals. Villain characters don't always have to be antagonists. Sometimes villain characters can be the protagonist of a story. Remember, a protagonist isn't necessarily a quote-unquote good guy. A protagonist is just a leading character who takes us through the events of the story. Characters like Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan, Light Yagami from Death Note, and Lelouch v Britannia are all examples of this. As the viewer, we find ourselves understanding and supporting these villains' decisions because they are the series protagonists. We see the world through their eyes and spend the most time with them. If you are looking for more information about creating villain characters, please refer to my How to Write Villain Characters in Comics and Manga video after you are finished watching this one. The second type of antagonist, a conflict creator, is a character whose goals are in direct conflict with the protagonist's goals. This type of antagonist doesn't necessarily have to be a quote-unquote bad guy. The purpose of a conflict creator is to show an opposite viewpoint to the protagonist. Examples of conflict creator antagonists include Chrono from Soul Eater, Teruki Hanazawa from Mob Psycho 100, and Oi Todo from Jujutsu Kaisen. While these characters may have challenged the protagonist at some point or another, it doesn't mean that they are bad guys. In fact, many of these characters would end up finding common ground with the protagonist and becoming an ally. The third type of antagonist, the protagonist themselves, is an internal conflict that results in the protagonist standing in their own way. This can be executed through a protagonist's insecurities, fears, or outlook on life dictating how they react to certain situations. While this type of antagonist isn't necessarily a bad guy character, it is an opposing force that prevents your protagonist from achieving their goals. Examples of characters whose internal conflict prevented them from achieving their goals include Korra from The Legend of Korra, Noriko Sonozaki from Kiz Niver, and Reki Kyan from Skate the Infinity. All three of these characters had an instance where they gave up on themselves because their insecurities became too much to handle. Your antagonist and protagonist should be two sides of the same coin. Their opinions, beliefs, or goals should oppose one another, causing them to get in each other's way. Your antagonist's motives should be unwavering, making them an obstacle your protagonist needs to overcome. An example of a protagonist and antagonist pair with conflicting beliefs is Senku Ishigami and Tsukasa Shishio from Dr. Stone. Both characters are reborn in the stone world. While Senku wishes to revive every human that was turned to stone, Tsukasa only wants to revive the uncorrupted youths. Maybe your antagonist isn't a bad guy. People and characters with incompatible personalities clash all of the time. Conflicting personalities is not a strong enough motive to be the base of your story's conflict, but it may play a role in your protagonist's character development. An example of a protagonist and an antagonist with conflicting personalities is Midoriya Izuku and Katsuki Bakugo from My Hero Academia. While Bakugo may literally have the personality traits of a villain, he has an unwavering dream to become a hero. He constantly clashes with Midoriya, creating conflict, but he is not the main antagonist of the series. This character dynamic is very popular in comics, manga, and webtoons. An antagonist may have a perfectly legitimate reason to want the same thing as the protagonist, but goes about it in a different way. Remember, the only reason we root for the protagonist is because we see the story told through their point of view. A great example of this dynamic is Sora and Riku from the Kingdom Hearts series. Both characters travel to many different worlds to figure out a way to save their friend Kairi. While Sora happens to become the Keyblade's chosen one, Riku decides to give his heart up to darkness in order to get stronger. In the end, both characters are essentially chasing the same goal, but they constantly clash because they disagree with the other's methods. Some stories present a nasty situation that could literally affect the entire world. Rather than a simple goal, an immediate need is created, causing characters to take a hard stance on the issue. In these circumstances, the protagonist and antagonist might simply just have different opinions about what the best course of action is. An example of this can be seen in Attack on Titan Season 4. With the threat of Marley wiping out Paradis Island, Eren Yeager took it upon himself to flatten the world in order to protect his people. While many of the characters oppose this decision, Eren believes it is the best course of action. Because of this, characters who were once allies of Eren become enemies who stand in his way, trying to stop him. When an antagonist is completely evil for the sake of being evil, the story might not hold your reader's attention. Having a character like this might also run the risk of being too unrelatable to the audience. While relatability isn't a necessity, it definitely helps the reader understand a character's motives and actions more. Your antagonist shouldn't be just a character you love to hate. They should also be someone you hate to love. Rarely do villain characters do evil things purely for the sake of it. The reason for this is because it's a surefire way to create a flat, one-dimensional character. The best characters have complex personalities, hidden depth, and moments of sympathy. Take the Joker, for example. He has one clear and defined goal: to create chaos. Every act committed by him and every twisted social experiment was intended to cause havoc, create division, and spur discord. Despite being mentally unhinged, he had a point to make and an objective to meet. If a character like the Joker is able to establish a goal, then any villain character can. Your antagonist should be multifaceted and realistic. They should experience setbacks and roadblocks that knock them off of their established path. Remember, your protagonist and antagonist are two sides of the same coin. They should both face the prospect of failure and gather the strength to push forward towards their goal. Giving your reader some insight into your antagonist's backstory is a great way to flesh them out as a character. As with real-life criminals, a bad childhood or a severe set of circumstances can explain an antagonist's downward spiral. By exploring your antagonist's past, your reader will be able to see aspects of the character before they became an antagonist in your story. Remember, every great antagonist is the protagonist of their own story. In their mind, they are the hero doing the right thing. To them, the protagonist standing in their way is the antagonist. Most well-written antagonists act out of a place of emotional pain so great that it hijacks their humanity and ability to empathize with others. Your antagonist wants something, usually it's power, and they will do everything they can to obtain it. An example of an antagonist with a well-written backstory is Griffith from Berserk. As a child, Griffith comes from a humble origin, being born poor and having to work his way up to become a noble. Griffith dreams of becoming the next king and ruling his own kingdom. He was remarkably determined, charismatic, and a great leader. Griffith becomes a villain after suffering the consequences of his own actions. The pain he endured while being arrested and tortured turned him into a husk of the former hero he once was. Though Griffith was partially responsible for his arrest, the unbalanced punishment he endured led to a loss of a great protagonist. Griffith would later develop into an antagonist that commits some of the worst atrocities in the series. The best antagonists are those who are unable to be separated from the protagonist. They should aid in the protagonist's character development through their inherent opposition to them. There has to be some sort of thread that connects your protagonist to the antagonist. An obvious example of this can be seen in the Harry Potter franchise. Lord Voldemort murdered Harry Potter's parents when he was a baby and left a lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. This magical scar intrinsically connects the two characters throughout the story. It is also a symbolic reminder of the connection between the two characters. It foreshadows that the fates of the protagonist and the antagonist are dependent on one another. Even if your antagonist doesn't show themselves until much later in the story, their presence should be felt everywhere the protagonist goes. In many comics, manga, and webtoons, the main antagonist has an army of subordinates that serve as minor antagonists. Wherever your protagonist turns, the aftermath of your antagonist's actions should always be on display. Your antagonist should have an effect on the world around them. How big or small this effect is will depend on the scale of your villain and the type of story you are trying to tell. No matter the scope of their abilities, your antagonist's existence should always shape the world around them in some way. This manifestation should connect with your antagonist's flaws, fears, and ambitions. Examples of antagonists with a major presence include the Anti-Spiral from Gurren Lagann, the Six Paths of Pain from Naruto, and the Wretched Egg from Dead Man Wonderland. In Gurren Lagann, the Anti-Spiral literally throws galaxies around during their battle with Simon, causing wide-scale collateral damage. In Naruto, the Six Paths of Pain lead the Akatsuki, a notorious group of rogue ninja who regularly commit crimes. During the Pain's assault arc, the Six Paths of Pain obliterate the Hidden Leaf Village and murder many of its inhabitants. In Dead Man Wonderland, the Wretched Egg caused the Great Tokyo Earthquake, which destroyed 70% of Tokyo. A good antagonist should be a worthy adversary to your protagonist. They shouldn't be weak and easily beaten like a villain character from a children's cartoon. They also shouldn't be so powerful that they can only be defeated by random chance. Having a villain who is in many ways equal in skill and intelligence to your protagonist will raise the stakes of their encounters. It also creates tension as your antagonist has the potential to defeat your protagonist. Unless you are writing a gag comedy series, your antagonist should never be just a joke. Cartoony antagonists such as Plankton from SpongeBob and the Ice King from Adventure Time exist to kickstart the plot of each episode in some way. The audience knows that they don't stand any real chance of victory against the series' protagonist. In order for the reader to take your antagonist seriously, you need to establish that your antagonist is a genuine threat. An example of a villain like this is Dio Brando from the series Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. Dio isn't just the overarching antagonist of the Joestar legacy, he is also a tool used to world build and introduce new plot elements. We literally witnessed Dio's descent to darkness in part 1 of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure as he moves into the Joestar home. This gives us an immediate connection with the character and gives us a lot of time to follow his aspirations and dreams. Seeing how nice the Joestar family was to him, you can't help but laugh when watching the ridiculous lengths that Dio would go to ruin their lives and steal their fortune. In conclusion, an antagonist is the character who most stands in the way of your protagonist achieving their goals. They create conflict and help propel the plot forward. By interacting with your antagonist, your reader is able to better understand your protagonist's beliefs, insecurities, and goals. That's gonna do it for this video. If you got some value out of it, please leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Drop a comment down below telling us about your favorite antagonist from any comic, manga, or anime series. If you would like to help support me in becoming a full-time content creator, please check out my Patreon link below. You can also support me by following me on all of my social media accounts. As always, keep creating, everyone. I will see you all in the next one.